Greetings and welcome to KSOL Black Talk Radio, the new black media. Today's video is about racism and what it is and what it is not. People seem to get the term racism confused with prejudice and or discrimination. There is a difference. We're going to cover that right here and right now. This subject is really important in the fact that I just did a video not long ago on white fragility. Why is it so hard for white people to talk about racism? And in that book, I did specifically a subject on white women's tears. That video is posted on my website, on my YouTube channel. If you have a moment, please take a look-see at that as well. But in this video here, this video on racism, this subject matter covered in the same book, White Fragility, gives its own take on what racism is and what it is not. So with that, we're going to cover some of those things right now. So to understand racism, we need to first distinguish it from mere prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is prejudgment about another person based on the social groups to which that person belongs. Prejudice consists of thoughts and feelings, including stereotypes, attitudes, and generalizations that are based on little or no experience and then are projected onto everyone from that particular group. All humans have prejudice. We cannot avoid it. People who claim not to be prejudiced are demonstrating a profound lack of self-awareness. Discrimination is action based on prejudice. These actions include ignoring, exclusion, threats, ridicule, slander, and violence. Everyone has prejudice and everyone discriminates. So given this reality, inserting the qualifier reverse is nonsensical. Black people in America, we've heard this statement one too many times, and again, it is a nonsensical statement that holds absolutely no truth whatsoever. So when a racial group's collective prejudice is backed by the power of legal authority and institutional control, it is transformed into racism, a far-reaching system that functions independently from the intentions of self-images of individual actors. So racism is a structure, not an event. Institutional power transforms prejudice and discrimination into structures of oppression. So it's the institutional power that transforms the prejudice and discrimination into what we call racism. Racism occurs when a racial group's prejudice is backed by legal authority and institutional control. Racism is a system. The system of racism begins with ideology. From birth, Europeans or white people are conditioned into accepting and not questioning these ideas. Ideology is reinforced across society, for example, in schools and textbooks, political speeches, movies, advertisements, holiday celebrations, and words and phrases. Because these ideas are constantly reinforced, they are hard to avoid believing and internalizing. Racism is deeply embedded in the fabric of our society. It is not limited to a single act or person. The direction of power between white people and black people is historic, traditional, and normalized in ideology. racism differs from individual racial prejudice and racial discrimination in the historical accumulation and ongoing use of institutional power and authority to support the prejudice and to systematically enforce discriminatory behaviors with far-reaching effects. Black people may also hold prejudice and discriminate against white people, but they lack the social and institutional power that transforms their prejudice and discrimination into racism. So, do you see the difference here? It's very clear. And I want to read this one more time because I really want my viewers on my YouTube channel to really get this. Racism differs from individual racial prejudice and racial discrimination in the historical accumulation and ongoing use of institutional power and authority to support the prejudice and to systematically enforce discriminatory behaviors with far-reaching effects. These are things that white or European people have been able to do worldwide, and no other group of people have done this very thing. And this is a major difference for white people to know and understand that this is based on institutional power and authority. And that is what makes your system a system that only you can be racist. Before I move this particular visual that I'm showing you right now, before I change to something else, I want to make something clear even with this. Black people have never put up signs like this, ordered by the police, a legal authority to discriminate and be racist towards white people. So you see, black people, we don't have the power to do things like this. This is why reverse racism is a fallacy. It's a crock. It's just a talking point for the actual racist to try to deflect and use to throw you off. Black people and other people of color may also hold prejudices and discriminate against white people, but we lack the social and institutional power that transforms our prejudice and discrimination into racism. The impact of our prejudice onto whites is temporary and contextual. Whites hold the social and institutional positions in society in a way that black people and other people of color simply do not. Black people may also hold prejudice and discriminate against their own and other groups of color, but this bias ultimately holds them down and, in this way, reinforces the system of racism that still benefits whites. When I say that only whites can be racist, I mean that in the United States, only whites have the collective social and institutional power and privilege over both black people and the other people of color. Black people do not have this power and privilege over white people. That in itself is a major difference, and exactly why there's no such thing as reverse racism. You see, individual whites may be against racism, but they still benefit from a system that privileges whites as a group. David Willman succinctly summarizes racism as, quote, a system of advantages based on race, unquote. So, David Willman, he says that racism is a system of advantages based on race. Interesting. These advantages are referred to as white privilege, a sociological concept referring to advantages that are taken for granted by whites that cannot be similarly enjoyed by black people and other people of color in the same context. Do we understand the difference now, how black people cannot be racist? But I digress. Let me continue. Stating that racism privileges whites does not mean that individual white people do not struggle or face barriers. It does mean that white people do not face the particular barriers, however, of racism. So we can remove the qualifier reverse from any discussion on racism. By definition, racism is a deeply embedded historical system of institutional power. It is not fluid and does not change direction simply because a few individuals of color managed to excel. Now, family, I'm going to end this off here. The source of my information came from the book White Fragility: Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo. I've mentioned that book already in another video. There's different subject matters that I will cover, but in this case I wanted to cover exactly what racism is, and so that we have the discussion on the difference of what racism is, what discrimination is, and what prejudice means. Those three words are all different. I explained it in this video. For any white person having any kind of confusion, I would refer you to the book White Fragility. And anyone else, black and otherwise, I'd still recommend the book as well. It's loaded with a lot of useful information. This is KSOL Black Talk Radio, bringing you yet another video, hoping you like and share it. And we'll see you in the next video.